All right, well, hello and welcome everyone again to our fifth and final session of Next Economy North Bay. Our Action Climate Change guest speaker series is coming to an end. Where did January and February go, eh? My name is Alex Miller and I'll be your moderator this evening. In my day job, I work as a sustainability officer at reThink Green. As we now bring this series to a close, Simon Blakeley will be giving his own presentation on the low carbon economy and the work that reThink Green is doing to support the development of more sustainable communities. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get started. I'll remind everyone to remain muted throughout today's presentation, though you may feel free to keep your camera on. If you have any questions, please make a note as we go along, and we'll allow time for question and answers right at the end of the presentation. And I certainly encourage your participation as always. You can raise your hand, or you can even just put it in the chat when it pops in your head. Our speakers will also be pulling together resources, and I'll circulate that in the coming days following the presentation with you all. Before I dive in, I'd like to acknowledge the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850, and the land on which we are gathering today, commonly known as North Bay, is situated in traditional Anishinaabeg territory on lands occupied by the people of Nipissing and Duckies First Nations. I'd like to acknowledge how grateful we are for the opportunity to gather today and thank all the generations of people who have been stewards of these lands. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions which Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have had, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must be clearly connected to our collective commitment to deliver on the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation in our communities. And of course, gathering remotely via Zoom also means we get to connect with people from across Turtle Island, which means our land acknowledgements need to go beyond where North Bay is. And if you're joining us from afar, and if you feel comfortable, pop it in the chat. Though we do have familiar faces in the room tonight, and I think we're all located in the same spot, but all good. So I'm now going to give a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. For anyone attending the series for the first time, I'll provide a quick overview of Next Economy North Bay and what we've learned from our speakers these past few weeks. Then I'll introduce Simon, our speaker for today, who will attempt to tie this all together, which is a mighty task if you ask me, and he'll be delving deeper into the business case for shifting to a low carbon economy and the broader societal and environmental benefits we could all realize by following this path. Following the presentation, we'll open up the floor for questions and you can ask them. Now, so founded in early 2019, Next Economy North Bay comprises of a grassroots collective of local business and community leaders who are seeking to build capacity to for the city of North Bay so that they can become leaders in the modern low carbon economy. It aims to provide a local, reputable, and publicly accessible body of knowledge, information, which acknowledges the existence of climate change, and at the same time, showcasing some of the many ways communities, businesses, and households can transition to a cleaner, greener, and more equitable economy. To date, we've organized a bunch of events, the one including North Bay's first Sustainability Expo in 2019. Then we had our first Commuter Challenge, which coincided with Canadian Environment Week in June 2021. And now this, our guest speaker series, which is sadly coming to an end, but we've had 5 guest speakers sharing their knowledge and expertise over 5 weeks, and it's been really great. For further information, you can always check out our social media pages, and as always, these videos, you can watch them all over again because they were great. If you want to watch them all over again, they'll be on YouTube. So this has been our first virtual speaker series, and what have we learned so far? In week 1, Kylie opened the conversation and gave us all a reality check by summarizing her work at Dufferin County, a community that's already been demonstrating this leadership on climate action. Dufferin County is an upper tier municipality with similar population data to North Bay, and it is also more dispersed, including the main urban center of Orangeville, plus some other smaller towns and villages making up the mix. Dufferin joined the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection program in 2018 and is now working through its milestone process. During the pandemic, Kylie and her team applied innovative techniques to engage its constituents and understand the primary issues of concern, while summarizing how this all applies from a climate lens. Insights regarding the rising cost of living, the need for greater energy security, resilience, and affordability, plus the ongoing development of new green building standards were all highlights of Kylie's presentation. In week 2, Rod demonstrated his cycling expertise by bringing us down a gear to the community and neighborhood levels, highlighting the potential opportunity areas within North Bay, while emphasizing the importance of social activities, cultural expression, and the desire for us to build a more livable community that supports sustainable growth and development. In his presentation, Rod debunked some of the economic thinking that has resulted in missed opportunities and addressed some of the concerns commonly spoken in relation to downtown North Bay. He shares some really cool video content from, I love this city, Montreal, and to articulate how well-founded urban design principles and smart city planning can stand the test of time in helping spur new opportunities. He provided an easy to understand and relatively quick tuition on math based upon the perils of Tom the farmer. And, we're all left questioning, has Tom invested in hydroponics since? Now, in week 3, we have Brene, and she dived right in on the topic of transportation options, identifying how the current lack of realistic and easily available alternatives to the private car can make it very difficult, if not impossible, to access some communities in Northern Ontario, and to that effect, discourages the uptake of ridership. Brene acknowledged that some of the more remote, rural, and northern communities within our region may never have the population required to support a traditional mass transportation system, though recent efforts to reinstate the Northlander train and expand Ontario Northland's bus services between its largest centers were welcomed. Brene also offered credible examples of smaller scale transportation projects that have already been introduced in communities across Ontario, including the classics like ride shares and carpooling, the innovators, auto, bike, and van shares, commercial options, so rentals, ride services, and shuttles. And then we've got hybrid options like taxis and dial-a-ride services like that. Brene also, if you remember, invited us all on a hot date on Valentine's and to a virtual roundtable discussion at which the public could make their views on transportation heard. We'll try and get a copy of that recording as well, and maybe if I get it in time, I can send it along with this webinar's proceedings. In week 4, Dave delivered a well-engineered and highly informative presentation in which he explained various sustainable building design options with a particular focus on multi-tenant and new residential-led developments. He reminded us that the German word house, spelled H-A-U-S, actually translates in English to building, meaning that passive house solutions from InduSpec is not limited in scope. He's made some improvements to his own house, and he's now realizing the benefits of that through reduced utility bills. But we saw that passive house is all buildings, that even a Subaru garage in Alberta has gained passive house certification, proving that anything is possible. He noted some passive house buildings have managed to achieve something between 80 to 90% reduction on power consumption, simply by substituting some of the more traditional mechanical methods introduced in the 20th century with less intrusive alternatives such as airtight building envelopes, natural ventilation, heat exchangers, and sensor-based technologies. He emphasized the need that as we move forward to increase awareness of the options available to households and consumers, to introduce changes in government legislation and policies, like within the Planning Act and building codes, and to upskill and retrain our workforce here in Northern Ontario so that we have those necessary skills and experience to bring about lasting change. With that, it is my pleasure to bring us to week 5 and to introduce our speaker, Simon Blakeley, who is the program director of reThink Green. Simon will be delivering his own presentation on the low carbon economy, drawing upon all that we've talked about so far and demonstrating that sustainable economy is possible. Full disclaimer here, Simon also happens to be my boss, and so I'm going to big him up now. This is where I really put him on the pedestal for us all. Simon is originally from the UK, which you'll tell from his accent. He has gained, among other qualifications, a joint honors undergraduate degree in geography and planning from the University of Birmingham, a master's degree in urban environmental design from Leeds Metropolitan University, a certificate in the principles of business and administration from Vision to Learn, and a certificate in carbon mitigation from McMaster University. Simon has 18 years of professional experience in land use and strategic planning and business and economic development, with a focus on sustainable development projects overall. And he also happens to be a pretty great manager. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Simon. Take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and thanks to Alex there for the introduction. Should probably also big you up as you've done a really excellent job helping coordinate this speaker series. So as mentioned, my name is Simon Blakeley, and I'm the Program Director for reThink Green, where I facilitate the Green Economy North and Smart Green Communities programs. It's a pleasure to have some more time to speak tonight with everyone about our work and how we're helping build more sustainable communities. So what is reThink Green? Those who have attended our speaker series over the past few weeks should now be familiar. reThink Green is a not-for-profit environmental programs incubator headquartered in Sudbury, which provides a variety of programs and services designed to support businesses, households, and communities, and connects people, ideas, and resources, helping them advance their sustainability goals. Through our membership-based programs, we're demonstrating that a more sustainable economy and society is possible. And anyone interested to learn more can check us out at www.rethinkgreen.ca. So as far as today's presentation goes, this will be divided into two parts, including first the context, and I'll be summarizing why we should act on climate change, what might be the predicted effects of climate change here in Northern Ontario, what's being done about it globally, nationally, provincially, and also here regionally. And I'll then change gears to the solutions, including how we at reThink Green can help you, including an overview of the low carbon economy and introducing our Green Economy North and Smart Green Communities programs. And I'll wrap this up by announcing some exciting new funding announcements that we just received. So stay tuned. So part one, let's get started. Let's take a second to pause and look at these images, which kind of summarize our collective experiences in recent times, whichever side you come at them from. And what's most striking to me is how they all apply within the context of climate change, and to a great degree embody the challenges that we now face as we move forward and seek to address the root causes. So what is climate change anyway? Let's firstly recap with some definitions so we're all on the same page. Climate is the usual weather of a place and typically varies per season within a somewhat predictable range. Weather is the changes we see and feel outside on a day-to-day basis. And climate change is the change in the usual weather that is found in a place, such as the average annual rainfall amounts or temperatures. Climate change can be described as a longer-term shift in global or regional climate patterns and is often attributed to the rise in global average temperatures from the mid-20th century to the present day. Most climate scientists now agree we need to act urgently to decarbonize our world, or risk exceeding some of the thresholds above which the effects of our changing climate could soon become irreversible. These are widely referred to as tipping points that would result from a global average increase of more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So that's relative to the period between 1850 and 1900. So what are some of the predicted effects of climate change here in Northern Ontario? In week one of the series, I provided an overview of the two regional energy and emissions plans that reThink Green published in 2021. These resulted in an estimate of the baseline emissions of 25 different municipalities, townships, and First Nations on Manitoulin Island and the North Shore of Lake Huron. Those reports can be viewed on our website under the Smart Green Communities tab, if anyone's interested in taking them on. The emissions data we obtained was entered into some climate modelling software. This predicted that Northern Ontario could be disproportionately affected from a global perspective. The model predicted an estimated annual average increase in temperature between 3 to 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. And that's based upon a business as usual scenario. And that is a scenario where there's no additional mitigation or adaptation measures have occurred beyond the dominant systems, processes, and technologies that we've become reliant upon. Predicted effects of our changing climate here in Northern Ontario include unpredictable and extreme weather, resulting in warmer winters, severe ice storms with frequent freeze melt, ice damming, more accidents, and damage to infrastructure. And wetter summers with increased rainfall, flooding, erosion, airborne diseases, droughts, heat waves, and frequent energy blackouts. And as you'll likely have seen on the news, COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, was held in Glasgow back in November 2021. A year late, due to the pandemic, this was widely understood to be a momentous make or break meeting. And some commentators suggest that COP26 was a moderate success, as the goal of achieving the overarching target of net zero emissions by 2050 was kept alive, with new pledges, targets, goals, and investments made by the vast majority of countries across the world. Some, however, suggest our leaders didn't quite go far enough or recognize the urgency of the problem. But we should understand that negotiations at this level on the international stage are challenging, to say the least. And what happened in Glasgow matters to us all. So moving forward, global nations have agreed to reconvene and develop more robust implementation plans, which take into account historic imbalances and the distinct challenges that are faced by developing countries, such as the Global South. COP27 is next scheduled to take place in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, between the 7th and 18th of November, 2022. What's happening at the national scale? Canada has made some comprehensive commitments to address the root causes of climate change in this pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change, and that was back in 2016. Additional legislation has been brought forward since to supplement some of these legally binding commitments. And on the 11th of December 2020, the federal government released its updated climate change plan, which proposes a roadmap forward to help achieve our emission reduction targets. And on the 12th of July 2021, Canada submitted its proposed nationally determined contributions to the United Nations. This proposed a total emissions reduction of between 40 to 45% by 2030, which is based upon 2005 emission levels. These updated targets were officially accepted by the global community in Glasgow. And what about the province? Some have challenged the current provincial government's record on environmental issues, but the province does, however, agree that improving operational efficiencies through enhanced energy efficiency measures is a priority. And in this regard, Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation has introduced a series of new funding programs which are targeted towards the renewal and upgrade of community assets. Community and recreation centres are known to be some of the single largest draws on power, so it would make sense to explore opportunities for significant energy gains with these big ticket items. Where do these emissions come from? Some of you might be wondering, people in our industry generally say or group them by source and by scope. But what are those, you might be saying? Emission sources can be wide-ranging, but are generally grouped by category or economic sector. In this graphic provided by McMaster University, you can see the oil and gas sector accounts for 26% of our total annual greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation is 25%. Buildings, including offices, commercial and residential uses, account for 13%. Heavy industry, 11%. Agriculture, 10%. Electricity generation and distribution, 8.8%. And waste, including a few of our hard-to-group sources, 5.8%. So just so we're all clear, these figures are averages across Canada, So the variations do occur by province, and this depends on a range of different factors, such as the fuel types being used, the transportation and distribution options, and provincial legislation and regulations as they relate to buildings, infrastructure, and energy performance standards. What about emissions scopes? The Global Greenhouse Gas Protocol breaks down emissions into 3 different scopes. Scope 1 includes direct emissions. These are the fuel sources consumed, or you could say burned on site, using owned and controlled resources, such as oil, natural gas, propane, and wood. Scope 2 includes indirect emissions that are purchased from a remote power generating station, primarily hydro, electricity, but also steam, heating, and cooling systems. And Scope 3 includes all of the indirect emissions, and these tend to apply to operations and activities and include the energy sources associated with transportation, plus the embodied carbon in products and services. Most emission calculations produced until now have covered scopes 1 and 2, almost exclusively, meaning that emissions arising from scope 3 activities are often left out as a bit of a blind spot. But as mid to large scale organizations face increasing pressure from levels of government, clients, customers to act on climate change, we're now seeing larger organizations go beyond scopes 1 and 2 and increasingly setting emission targets for their scope 3 emissions. This is being reflected in their procurement decisions. Smaller businesses, especially those forming part of the larger organization supply chain, should prepare for this inevitable shift. They want to remain competitive. But what can we do about it? Or how can we calculate the emissions arising from these different sources and scopes? Our carbon footprint, you could say. Well, that would require carbon to be considered the universal metric against which all greenhouse gases are benchmarked. And lucky for us, it is. It's known as the carbon dioxide equivalent. But it's not quite as simple as that, especially where larger scale and more complex buildings are concerned. We first need to complete a greenhouse gas inventory to determine what emission sources and scopes exist within the chosen setting. We then need to do some calculations to ensure we have the right emission factors associated with each source, be it heating, ventilation, cooling systems, or perhaps a piece of equipment. Different emission sources will have different emission factors depending on their age or efficiency. Take a new car versus an old car, for example. Emissions factors therefore seek to quantify the greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere associated with these activities. And in most cases, emission factors are simply averages of the available data. They're assumed to be representative of long-term averages for facilities, plant, and equipment. These emission factors are generally expressed as the weight of the pollutant divided by unit, weight, volume, distance, or duration of the activity which emits the pollutant. For example, the kilograms of particulate emitted per megagram of coal burned. Emission factors have long been applied as a way of determining the total amount of emissions arising from activities at national, provincial, and industrial scales. They are now increasingly being applied at municipal, business, and household scales, which I'll return to later because we just might be able to help. So once we've determined these emissions factors for each source, we're able to calculate the CO2 equivalent measurement by multiplying each factor against its global warming potential. The chart shown here includes the global warming potential for carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides. The higher the number, the higher the global warming potential. This might explain the current emphasis on reducing our consumption of meat, especially beef, and also innovations that have taken place within the car industry over time. Carburetors to electronic fuel injection systems, and more recently the shift to electric vehicles. But how does all this relate to the low carbon economy? You might be wondering. So the answer is by completing these calculations, we can produce robust estimates of our total baseline emissions in any given year. So just letting somebody else into the meeting there. And with that information, we are empowered to know what our impact is where we should focus our efforts, and the options available to positively reduce those emissions over time. And as you'll see shortly, other businesses and organizations are demonstrating you can do just that, good for the planet and save money. But before we go there, I just want to highlight there are a range of other policy mechanisms and levers at play here, which are guiding our transition to a low carbon economy. And that shift is inevitable, because we do live in a global interconnected world, and the vast majority of our trading partners, including other industrialized nations, are also going in this direction. So let me just highlight a few areas where changes are already happening. We could probably do a webinar on each of these, but it's important to understand how they apply. This helps. First, there is putting a price on carbon in the form of a tax or a levy, whatever you want to call it. This helps shift the burden back to those who are responsible for it. This is called the polluter pays principle, whereby you pay less if you consume less. And Canada's carbon tax has two parts: carbon levy on fuel purchases and a big emitters program for industrial facilities. Second, there's the global border carbon adjustments. These are intended to assist countries as they move forward with their international climate commitments, while recognizing that variations do occur across different countries over time. The key challenge here is to identify how these disparities can be coordinated to achieve results in terms of lowering greenhouse gas emissions without undermining Canada's global competitiveness. This is not an issue that Canada alone can address, and discussions continue with our key trading partners. For example, the European Union has released a legislative proposal on its carbon border adjustment mechanism for its 27 member states. The UK is proposing to introduce similar measures. Here in North America, in February 2021, Canada and the US agreed to create a roadmap for a renewed Canada-US partnership, in which both countries committed to work together to address the impacts on trade from global disparities in these climate policies. Next, we have carbon offsets, which broadly refer to a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or an increase in carbon storage, such as through land restoration or the planting of trees. That is used to compensate for the emissions that occur elsewhere. Carbon offset credits, on the other hand, are transferable instruments certified by governments or independent certification bodies to represent an emission reduction of 1 metric ton of CO2 or an equivalent amount of other greenhouse gases. Purchaser of an offset credit can retire it to claim the underlying reduction on their greenhouse gas goals. The key concept is that offset credits are used to convey a net climate benefit from one entity to another. And finally, for now anyway, we have carbon capture, utilization, and storage solutions, which offer a wide range of ways to reduce our total greenhouse gas emissions, either by extracting historic gases from the atmosphere or preventing them from being released at the source. Options include both natural and mechanical solutions, and they range from regenerative agriculture to geological and oceanic sequestration, and even the conversion of CO2 for use in agricultural feedstock, food and drink production, and biofuels. So you should now be asking, what are the solutions here? What kind of actions might businesses, organizations, and communities seek to pursue here in Northern Ontario? Here you can see some examples of our work at reThink Green, including energy management services, project-based supports, radio interviews, conferences, and our annual sustainability awards. We even oversaw a waste diversion project in partnership with Ribfest Sudbury. And as we move forward with the low carbon economy, we will need to invest more in enhanced energy efficiencies, including energy retrofits, new builds, that are shaped by strengthened legislation, regulations, and funding-based supports. We need to look at substitute fuel and energy sources, including the accelerated uptake of renewables and smart sensor-based technologies. We need to look at integrated waste diversion and management systems while repairing, restoring, recycling, and reusing the abundant products and materials that we already have in circulation. We need to consider nature-based solutions guided by the practices and principles of circularity, regenerative design, biomimicry that replicate nature's own natural systems. At the property scale, the cost and payback of solar and battery-based technologies is now again becoming highly attractive to investors. Local solar installers here in Northern Ontario are reporting record levels of interest in sales. Energy audits will generally be required to support grant funding applications, and that's one area where we can assist. At the community scale, the installation of microgrids powered by renewable energy sources could significantly reduce the amount of energy lost through transmission between communities. Development of net zero buildings will add an extra layer of resilience to communities impacted by climate change. And given our experience with the low carbon retrofit project, reThink Green is equipped to provide project management services on a fee-for-service basis to assist with these broader strategic and transformational projects. From an electric vehicle perspective, the Government of Canada has announced that fuel-powered cars and light trucks will be banned from sale as of 2035. And I'll be announcing some details shortly on how we can support that transition too. And now some more about this. The Green Economy North program was originally established in 2016, and it remains Northern Ontario's only membership-based sustainable business program. We equip businesses, not-for-profits, and the broader public sector with the knowledge, information, and tools they need to pivot and succeed in the green economy. Green Economy North offers affordable and tailored support to help businesses set and meet their emissions reduction targets. As a program, we deliver technical, advisory, and research-based programming. We organize and deliver business and community events. We encourage knowledge sharing and collaboration among our networks. And we recognize and celebrate the progress made by members. Once the impact of the business or organization has been quantified as a carbon dioxide measurement, we delve deeper and assist our members in producing action plans and setting these targets to quantify and reduce their emissions, help them achieve cost savings. Working with our partners, including program members, different levels of government, academia, utility companies, community groups, and other stakeholders, we're leading the conversation and supporting the shift towards a more sustainable way of business. Green Economy North forms a hub within the wider Green Economy Canada network, which serves communities and regions from across Canada. The network's reach currently extends from Edmonton to New Brunswick and from London to Ottawa. In this wider network, hubs share best practice case studies and other information to support our members as they make progress with their goals. Green Economy Canada leverages funding opportunities of value to the network as a whole. They have facilitated expert working groups such as the Net Zero Manufacturing Project and the Sustainable IT Procurement Project, through which SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, have received up to $20,000 worth of free carbon mitigation training and advice to help them address these industry-specific issues and challenges. You can also see here some examples of hub members and sponsors from across the Green Economy Canada network. And together, we're demonstrating a more sustainable economy as possible. To date, the Green Economy Canada network has engaged over 300 businesses, set more than 70 targets, and secured commitments to reduce more than 200,000 tons of greenhouse gases. Just like to share a few examples of case studies from across the network, which demonstrate the various benefits that can be gained from following these low carbon pathways. Veriforming, located in Cambridge, Ontario, has introduced more than 100 micro projects at their steel fabrication business over the past 15 years. This has allowed them to achieve a 77% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in relation to their baseline emissions year. And with that, saved over $2 million in utility costs. The company has reinvested some of these savings back into its staff and now has a very high average retention level of more than 10 years. Veriform uses carbon offsets to ensure it's now a net zero business. And what's more is, during this whole period, they've doubled the size of their facility and their workforce. So you could say they're actually climate positive by 100%. Next one is Hemans, which was founded in 1963 as a small family-run strawberry farm. It's grown to serve London, Ontario, and its surrounding communities for all their gardening and berry needs. Recognizing that growing food has an impact on the environment, they've searched for better solutions to minimize their impact. Measures have included flooding benches in greenhouses to recapture 100% of the water that isn't absorbed by the plants for reuse. Investment in a drip irrigation system in the berry fields in the early 2000s, which was actually quite novel at the time, to water directly into the roots. And this managed to reduce water usage by 75%. It borrowed from a program at the Antarctic Research Center to manage greenhouse upgrades, and were able to double production while keeping their energy use static. And as you can see from the image above, they installed a 264 panel solar array on 2 of their buildings, which now generates 57% of their annual power needs. Closer to home, I'd like to highlight one of our Green Economy North members, Split Rail Brewing Co., which is taking great strides towards sustainable business practices. Founded in 2012, Split Rail was Manitoulin Island's first craft brewery. More recently, they expanded their product line further, experimenting with craft sodas made exclusively with maple syrup and berries sourced from the island. One such ingredient, the hawberry, is a native species that is treasured by Indigenous communities for its medicinal properties. Green Economy North previously supported Split Rail by calculating their carbon footprint and developing a proposal which enabled them to access funding under the Government of Canada's Climate Action Incentive Fund. They were able to purchase an energy-efficient canning line, and this eliminated the greenhouse gases and costs associated with the using a mobile canning service, which actually traveled from Toronto almost 600 kilometers away. The business is currently working on various projects to eliminate waste and delivers its spent grain to leftover in the brewing process to local pig farmers. As a designated hub, Green Economy North is responsible for guiding Northern Ontario members through our tried and tested milestone process. Starting in April 2022, we're introducing a new cohort-based model where businesses and organizations will have the opportunity to benefit from structured training sessions and gain access to the latest tools, resources, and information on grants. We'll also be creating some new professional networking and peer-based learning opportunities. But what are these milestones? Milestone 1 is get engaged. At this stage, members are oriented at our kickoff meetings, which we're starting to do now, and get to know the network. We talk data, emission sources, and we take the necessary first steps. By keeping our fingers on the pulse, we're equipped to share up-to-date knowledge, information, and resources among our members. This stage really is all about empowering and enabling our members to understand their own footprint, because as of right now, those small to medium-sized supply companies are underserviced. We bring in guest speakers, share industry examples, and attend conferences, workshops, and seminars before summarizing our research with members. Milestone 2 is measure your footprint. We conduct baseline energy walkthroughs and produce greenhouse gas emissions inventory reports using our impact tracking tool. Members share their utility bills, and this information is referenced to understand where there's additional room for improvement. Recommendations are then communicated with our members. Milestone 3 is set a target. Members are offered support mobilizing their green teams, outlining their greenhouse gas emission reduction goals and pathways, and creating an achievable action plan which sets ambitious reduction targets. Milestone 4 is achieve results. It's got to have fun, right? We recognize our members' success through media releases social media shout outs, and case studies. And we celebrate individual achievements at our annual sustainability awards. So I'll also take this opportunity to mention the Smart Green Communities program, which is another membership-based program of Green. Smart Green Communities will follow the same milestone process that I just outlined for Green Economy North. It's designed to build capacity and promote collaboration for long-term energy planning within municipalities, townships, and First Nation communities here in Northern Ontario. By buying equipment for communities with the knowledge, information tools they need to address specific challenges within their jurisdictions. Before I tell you how you can get involved, I'd just like to share some very exciting news that we only just received in regard to new funding for our organization. We're not permitted to name either the funder or the amount received at this time, pending the public announcement. But we're very excited and believe this could be a game changer for Northern Ontario. New funding will allow us to hire additional staff and expand our capacity to serve members all across Northeastern Ontario. And starting in the fall of 2022, we'll introduce a microgrant program to support our members as they achieve energy efficiency gains, reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and introduce more sustainable business practices. Members of the Green Economy North program could be eligible to access exclusive funding of up to $5,000 to cover a maximum of 50% of costs associated with projects that increase energy efficiencies. Primary objective of the program is to fill this gap in the existing funding ecosystem. It will be applied towards a wide range of innovative project-based solutions with costs allocated towards equipment, materials, labor, and planning-related activities. We will also work with members to help identify and access additional external funding opportunities. Microgrant program will be accessible to businesses, not-for-profits, the broader public sector, and First Nation communities. Unfortunately, municipalities and townships are ineligible at this time. Participating organizations seeking to access this new funding must be paid members of our Green Economy North program and in good standing. It will also be required to have completed an up-to-date greenhouse gas inventory, which is a service provided under milestone 2 of the program. Additional eligibility and project assessment criteria are in development and will be announcing further details in due course. And the next one is, our partners at Green Economy Canada were also successful in their application to introduce a new EV charger incentive program courtesy of Natural Resources Canada. The program officially launched on February 4th with an advanced opportunity for organizations led or owned by underrepresented groups, including women, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, persons with disabilities, and LGBTQ2S+ individuals. That initial intake will run for a period of 45 days to March the 21st, when the application process will be made available to all organizations. Successful applications will be eligible for reimbursement of up to 50% of expenses incurred when installing electric vehicle charging stations for a maximum of $100,000 per applicant. Other limits do apply, depending on the charger type. The program will run from January the 31st to March the 31st, 2024. The goal of dispersing $3.4 million in incentives during that period. And applications will be assessed on a first-come, first-served basis, and we anticipate this funding will go quickly. All organizations are eligible, including municipalities and townships. We encourage those interested to contact us as soon as possible and start to prepare their applications now. Please reach out to me for further details. So the current deadline to join this next cohort is Monday, the 28th of February at 5 o'clock. So we're getting close. Businesses and organizations interested in receiving a quote to join the program are invited to complete our membership inquiry forms for either Green Economy North or Smart Green Communities on our website, which is at www.rethinkgreen.ca. All membership fees are calculated on an equitable basis in reference to a chart that is produced by Rethink Green and accounts for both the total floor space area, that's in square footage, and applies to assets owned or leased by your organization, and the total number of employees, which is based on the full-time equivalent number of positions. By pricing our memberships this way, we try to ensure they fairly reflect the energy intensity and use of different businesses and the scale of their operations. So please speak with us if unclear about how to calculate these. Be happy to provide a quote and guide you on. Spaces will be allocated on a first come, first served basis. Sponsorship and guest speaking opportunities are available, and we will be repeating these cohorts every 6 months for the next 2 years, at least. So, and with that, I guess I'll hand it back to Alex. Here's my contact information. If you didn't have it already, I'd love to hear from you. A number of you been here for the past few weeks. I'm sure you've got many inquiries and you're raring to go. So yeah, I'll hand it to Alex for the question and answer session.
That was really great, Simon. Well done. Round of applause. Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting just how important I think a program like this is, because I mean, obviously in full disclosure, I also work at reThink Green and help run this Green Economy North program. So I'm about to just further elaborate this same message, but you know, quote unquote pipeline, it's coming down the pipeline from federal and provincial governments that are setting these targets. And I think everybody really needs to get on board. And it's interesting that, you know, if you don't, you're going to get left behind a little bit. So it's great that programs like this kind of exist, and especially something so hands-on to help various businesses kind of, you know, get ready and also get empowered and be able to kind of use this as an opportunity to really like see it not so much as a hindrance or an annoyance, but really see that its value in like employee retention and savings, and it really is a business opportunity, you know? I don't know if anybody has pressing questions right away, but Rod left us a good one here in the chat before he left. So maybe we can get started with that one.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at that one actually. I mean, there's quite a lot there. I don't have a specific answer to that right now.
Right.
It's best that we, you know, technical questions like that we take it away, really think about it and provide some advice. And really, it's just to emphasize that that's part of the service that we provide, you know, that's for 2 years now, I get calls every day from people from all different like economic sectors, all across Northern Ontario, and it's amazing how much work's going on. I really want these cohorts to be a success and everybody to come together and really learn and hear firsthand all the stuff that I'm hearing, because it's in there, but like it needs to be action on the ground. We need to start mobilizing communities and businesses to achieve this change, and I think that we can do it. I really do. If we all start collaborating more and opening up and locking these opportunities, then we'll get there.
Yeah.
So is there any questions? I know there's a lot to take in there. There's so much, and it's been a lot of work in progress to get to that stage to be able to introduce these micro grant programs. It's if you look at it in the sense that you know, if you're a small business unit, maybe in downtown North Bay, and you've already identified that some of your major energy efficiency problems are coming from old windows and doors, you know, leaking heat and energy out into an environment. That if you were looking to replace those, that, you know, that could cost quite a bit of money. So when we can come in and potentially provide 50% of costs up to $5,000, it might just be the trigger that some people need to take that action, right? And after they've done that, not only will it improve the look of the place, its energy performance, and reduce the greenhouse gases, but they immediately start to see savings on the utility bills after that. So there's this term, you know, life cycle cost analysis, and like really have to consider about what you invest in to buildings and property and the investments that you make and the savings that you can gain from having done that. So we shouldn't see every kind of investment that we make as an expense. If it's going to save money in the longer term, then it's the logical thing to do.
Yeah, and I think this microgrant program comes at a perfect time also with hopefully the tail end of COVID, and businesses really trying to recover, and whilst also being mindful of, the role that they have to play in, mitigating climate change by means of reducing their own emissions. Like, this microgrant program can really, help like get some traction on some of those dream projects maybe that they have as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can keep talking, but please, anyone did jump in. Like, I know there's see the cogs turning right there. Yeah, was there any particular parts of the presentation that surprised you? Did you learn something new today? Was there something that you didn't agree with, maybe? No?
I'm just going to ask about the EV new program that will support electrical charging stations. Will that support, for example, purchase of maybe electric buses? Will it support installation of those charging stations? What will it cover?
Yeah, I mean, there was a webinar today, but unfortunately I wasn't able to attend it because I was still developing this presentation, but I will get a copy of that. I'll send it to you. I believe that it is focused purely on the actual charging infrastructure themselves, as opposed to like the fleet electric buses. There are other programs out there, both federally and provincially, I believe, that might enable some of those electric vehicles to be purchased at a reduced cost. But we're going to see more of these incentives coming down the line as we move forward. So hopefully that answers. But if you know anyone, and it is open to all businesses and organizations, including municipalities, First Nations, not-for-profits. So, and the greater the impact that you can demonstrate, the more likely you are to receive the funding. And they don't have to be publicly accessible as well, is what I found out. So let's say you own a big manufacturing facility and you're looking to electrify your whole fleet there, and you need this charging infrastructure to power there. Given that it's going to be in use all the time, there's a net benefit there to everybody that investment takes place. So it wouldn't necessarily need to be publicly accessible, but if you take a municipality or college or something like that does have a more public facing element to it, then you have the option of being able to include a public charging system within that.
I'm thinking of, for example, tourism and encouraging people who have electric cars. So if they have range anxiety about, say, Toronto to North Bay, putting in, for example, charging stations would encourage people to, or be amenable to traveling that far, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. There's a lot of work going on on some of these, big funding streams that's coming about from the government to install these networks, like especially along the main urban centres and corridors, so all the way from Windsor, Sarnia to Montreal, I believe. That pretty much within every 15 to 20 kilometres, don't quote me on that, but pretty frequent, there will be these banks of electric vehicle charging, which will make that instantly accessible for those populations. In terms of Northern Ontario, obviously much more dispersed. Investments will still go in, but it's not unforeseeable that even the smallest rural townships, along the highways will all have at least one, and they'll all be connected, and there'll be information where you can access on an app to determine where you can find that, or clear signage. But it's all part of that infrastructure piece, right? To bring awareness and to decrease that range anxiety, as you said.
I read an article, I forget if it was Municipal Magazine or whatever, about the people that travel with their electric car, EV cars, and how they plan their trips. And they know that they need to recharge and it's X number of hours. So then they plan, and I was picturing downtown North Bay, you know, at the museum parking lot, that you have 3, 4, or 5 charging stations, and while their vehicles are charging, they can go eat downtown, or they can go to the museum, they can walk the waterfront, they can spend some money here and maybe even like it and stay overnight. So that is a market to be captured in the tourism world, which is great. But I will, my plan is on these 5 evenings, I think they'll all end up at engineering, that I'll forward all the YouTube presentations to the engineer department, because they do have money to start creating a plan, a strategic plan, and input of how they're going to implement this into the city. Because some people might think it's just easy, I'll just go buy the buses or whatever, but you need to train the personnel, you need to you know, retool stuff, so there's a lot of things that need to happen before you actually go purchase the vehicles or the, but thank you, this was well worth even though I left at times, I'm going to go back and pick up what I've lost. But
Okay.
I am forwarding all of the 5 of them to appropriate departments, and I think they're all going to end up on John Severino's emails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate that. I was going to make the ask of you, so I'm glad you wanted
you know, but the other thing too, in this, I had to step out. I had a guest come into the house. My sister visited. So, but the one thing we were having right now, we were trying to, for this new community center that we're going to be building at Eau Michelle. That's what we wanted, was some charging stations, and we were trying to entice North Bay Hydro to pick up the tab. But it's a third party that has them at the energy park between the Y and the Royal Gardens. There are 2 or 3 stations there, but it's a third party that operates those. But then you've just given us an incentive here that there's, you know, apply and get 50%.
Yeah.
And get
absolutely.
going there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an option, and we're here to support, to enable these opportunities. It's the Green Economy Canada does great work, and there's other stuff that I can't speak about, but there's other major contracts that they're currently trying to get in place as well. Which we'll be announcing details of in due course. So this is going to start to move fast now. Like the times have changed. Like we've had 2 years of pandemic response, you know, and it's been the focus, and everything's PPE and all this. And so now it's really time to, a lot of imagining has been taking place as well among people looking for these different futures, you know, more equality across the sectors, more environmental achievements. And so now that this funding will start to get released, where we're just really hopeful that, you know, there'll be uptake and that there is interest in these programs. For sure.
Yeah. So they will. I will be forwarding it. Like I have 4 now, and produces at some point early next week. Alex will be sending this one, but I will be forwarding them all to the probably John Severino is the head of engineering and infrastructure, and this would fall underneath his.
Yeah, and I will publicly say thank you as well, because you probably weren't aware, but the City of North Bay, I did have a couple of meetings with them in economic development, and they wrote a letter of support for the application that we put in.
Okay.
Yeah, so that went into the mix, as did the other 5 main northern centres in Northern Ontario. So yeah, so every little helps.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know yet. Maybe if my next car will be an electric car or not, but we'll see. It's just that I find at this stage of my life, I'm driving less and less, and I'm trying to justify the old thinking, right, of how much mileage, how much gas is that going to cost me per year versus how much am I going to save if I go this way. So, but who knows, by the time I'm ready, maybe the price will have gone down tremendously, and then it'll be fine.
Maybe, and you know, this whole like organizations dedicated to spreading knowledge and information about electric vehicles and which are the best options and which ones, you know, have different performance standards. Like there's an electric vehicle society in Sudbury, for instance. It's part of this whole network, and there's different chapters across Canada. And I'm not sure we have one here in North Bay, but I'd like to see that happen, or expand the Sudbury one to a pan Northern Ontario network anyway, so that people here can benefit or be more aware of services like that. There's places like Plug and Drive in Southern Ontario where you can actually go and road test some of these vehicles and learn more about that. And Kylie mentioned that they do road shows too. So these are all part of the service that we could offer, is making these connections, helping facilitate some of these events. We could do an event on EV cars here in North Bay and invite the community at large to come and check it out for themselves. And because we hear for far too often now, you hear people saying the batteries won't work, it's too cold. Yeah. Well, they do. I mean, look at Norway. Norway has a similar climate to us, and now they haven't quite banned it. They haven't need to ban electric vehicles because electric vehicles sound like hotcakes, and they've installed all this infrastructure.
They've had an intense uptake.
Yeah, and they've realized that that's where they want to go, and they want to breathe clean air, so there's many benefits that can be derived from it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else any questions?
Are you going to try to promote these for people to go to YouTube and like redo them? Because it's such a shame. I saw the first night and the amount of people, and I thought it was going to grow, but it didn't. And I know we're all busy and but I hope that you'll be able to promote through other channels, or have, maybe go to all the cities and ask them to promote your links on their YouTube, on their Facebook pages and stuff like that, to get more people, to educate more people.
Well, absolutely. I mean, just this week, the last 2 weeks, we've had a number of meetings with Sault Ste. Marie, because we're also expanding there, right? And so we're really forming a strong partnership with them right now in terms of what levels of conversation can we have in terms of working with economic development, with the climate change officer that they have, with senior members of staff and councillors there to ensure that everybody's familiar. So that is a model that we would love to follow in North Bay as well. I mean, could potentially work towards that and have a meeting and strategize it. But this will be a public video, so let's not go into details now. But
I somehow think that you're going to be there for candidate nights. You're going to line yourself up for the election and get some environmental questions, climate change questions, wherever you can.
Well, I'd like to do, because, it's really personally important to me. It's one of the reasons that I worked with this group. That Rod was on the call earlier, he dropped off, and a few others, to develop Next Economy North Bay. And it's by pursuing this, that's how I connected with Reef and Green. And it's everyone brings different skills and expertise to the mix, right? I don't know everything. I'd say I'm more a generalist in some areas. But I'm here to open these doors and opportunities to people. And if I can be helpful in doing that, then that's all I aspire to do.
Okay. No, so I won't allow Simon to run anytime soon. I need him. He's a good boss.
Oh, me. I'm thinking he would probably be there at candidates night asking questions.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
And trying, because you did that happened last time. And I remember it was at, is it United Church, the corner of Castle and McIntyre. And there was a lot of environmental questions, which as I walked in, I was, oh my God, I know nothing about that. And thank God for the phone. And my sister and I were just Googling and said, okay, here it is. This is how you can answer this. And because when you're totally green, now I know more about the city and about our methoding, recapturing process at the city landfill and all these things that we do, and the energy park and the so I'm a step ahead of new candidates, put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll be able to lend some of that knowledge and experience to other potential candidates too. I mean, the purpose of this particular call wasn't to talk about North Bay politics, but it is an important issue that we do need to kind of address as we move forward. This is a turning point globally, but also locally as well. We really need to see this for the economic opportunity that it is. And if we don't, we're going to get left behind if we don't start to move on some of these projects and goals, right? And that's not the fault of the city necessarily. It's, other businesses, some businesses are complacent too, or they just don't know about the opportunities that exist. So yeah, the more that we can bring to the fold, the better. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, I'm just going to share my screen again before we wrap up. I'll say, that thank you. And that was a really great conversation. Our next event is going to be the North Bay Commuter Challenge. It's going to take place between June 5th and June 11th of 2022. As mentioned before, this is a national initiative which takes place in communities all across Canada. Last year, we developed a predominantly virtual campaign where we sought out to build awareness and capacity around the active transportation options available to individuals and workplaces. And we really encourage that more active, healthy, and sustainable lifestyle. The organization committee for this upcoming one, they're going to meet in the coming weeks. And if you have ideas on how to kind of advance this initiative, we'd love to hear from you. There's also going to be, sponsorship opportunities. So if you know of any businesses that might be interested, feel free to email us. Our email is nexteconomynb@gmail.com. And also reach out if you have any other questions or any details you'd like us to elaborate on, anything you want to talk about, or, brainstorm together of things we can do moving forward following this whole series. And with that, I'm going to put our final slide. A big thank you to everybody for attending. I know I learned lots and had lots of fun. I hope you did too. And thank you to our amazing sponsors, Remedy Developments, for being a climate leader in our community, and Penny and Company Marketing and Design for the awesome graphics that we've been able to use throughout the last 5 weeks. And just a final thank you to all of our speakers, Kylie Ann Grube, the Climate Engagement Specialist at County of Dufferin, Rod Bills, President of Remedy Developments, Bernane Lloyd, Coordinator at Northwatch, Dave Smith, Partner at Induspec, and again, Simon Blakeley, Program Director at reThink Green. And so I will wrap this up. I know the world's feels quite unstable and unforgiving place right now. And nobody said that change comes easily. And climate change might yet emerge as the fiercest critic and opponent of the many changes we have already introduced in our natural world. And since the Industrial Revolution came to be. And one thing is for certain, that we've still got plenty of work to do here. But another thing for certain is that we have great leaders here in North Bay, Simon included, all of our speakers included, and we are in good hands. If we just listen to them, we'll have this sorted in no time. So with that, I wish you all a great evening and good night. We'll see you soon, hopefully. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Good night.